Good evening. Welcome to the Stage by Stage show live. The second version, the one that we did 2 weeks ago, seemed to go down quite well, even though it was 2.5 hours. We'll try and make this one a little bit shorter. Same sort of format. It's a question and answer with Martin Rowe, who was my guest on the podcast on Friday morning. The idea behind all of this is we do the learning, the hard work, in other words, on the podcast. Get some action points for people, and this is an opportunity for you to ask any questions. So in the comments on the right hand side of the screen, tell us where you are, where you're listening from, where you're watching, I should say, and any questions that you have for Martin or any of the other guests, feel free to enter them in there. I've had loads of really positive comments, feedback, shares, the likes. Thanks a million for all of that. It's been very, very overwhelming, actually. And Martin is quite a shy person, so he is a bit nervous about all of it, and probably still nervous in the background there before he comes on, thinking about what's going to happen. But the format for tonight is dead simple. We'll get the guys come on, introduce themselves, 2 or 3 different guests throughout the night. And then we'll get some questions, a couple of people to ask those, and we'll just play it by ear and see where it goes. There's nothing really formal with it. So that's the plan. So without further ado, let's get Mr. Rowe on and we'll have a chat with him. So how you doing, champ?
I'm very good, champ. How are you?
I'm good. What time is it in Whistler, Canada, as we speak?
It is 11:30 in the morning.
11:30 in the morning. What have you been doing today?
Today, so far, steady day. Claire, my wife's been out mountain biking this morning, so I've looked after the kids a bit. And yeah, Willow's doing Lego. Toby's making dinosaur cards like top trumps. And yeah, I've just been chilling out a little bit compared to normal.
Excellent. What's the rest of the day planned then?
I've no idea. This is the highlight. I haven't got any plans after this.
Clearly. Excellent. Well, that's good. Well, we won't delay you too long, about, as I say, 2 hours, 3 hours. That should be plenty. Okay. So if you haven't heard the podcast with Martin that we released on Friday, where have you been? What have you been doing? That's where it is, stagebystage.com/blog. Have you had much feedback, Martin?
Yeah, it was weird, really, because I hate the sound of my own voice on anything, and it took me ages to go and sit and listen to this, and I just thought, oh, cringing, but yeah, I shared it eventually on my Facebook page, and then yeah, good feedback from some friends and even some guys that I've done some driver coaching with, so everything's looking good. So it's given me a bit more confidence to come on today.
Excellent. So for those people who haven't listened to it, maybe new to rallying, just give us a quick 30 seconds, a minute, who you are, what you've achieved, where you live now.
My name's Martin Rowe, and yeah, I won the Production World Rally Championship in 2003 with Trevor. And along the way, I've won a couple of other championships, and been really fortunate to travel the world and working in motorsport. And then in 2009, I moved over to Canada, moved to Whistler. And since then, we've been working here in Whistler and did some more rallying whilst I've been here, represented Subaru Team Canada in 2014. And yeah, that's about it.
Excellent. Okay, so I wouldn't leave you high and dry, just the 2 of us chatting. So to give you a little bit of a comfort blanket, I've got another person to come on. So another guest who's going to be with us all night, and it is Gethin Jones, all the way from Wales. Hello. Geth, how are you?
I'm grand, actually. I should say good evening, champ, and good morning, champ.
How are you doing?
Like what you did there. How are you?
I'm grand, actually, yeah. Had a good day.
Have you had a nice Sunday lunch, Sunday dinner?
I've had my Sunday supper at about 6 o'clock, which is lovely. Nice roast beef. Martin will be proud. I was basting away for about an hour and a half. His cookery skills are as good as his driving skills. We know that.
We were talking about that in the podcast, that he'd never even had a dinner party before he got the B&B, and then he was making meal plans, 14-day meal plans for guests. So
yeah, well, I'm lucky enough to spend some time out with him in Canada, and I remember the French toast mornings, actually helping serving guests some days.
French toast, you know, exactly. Go on a bit, no?
Yeah, don't bring back memories of all those yet. But yeah, no, we've had our ups and downs and had to deal with some culinary skills last minute. But the B&B was good. We had some nice breakfast there.
Everybody really enjoyed the breakfast, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, and we did say on the show, on the podcast, that the reason that you ended up in Whistler is because of this mad Welshman here. Do you want to tell the story and see if it corresponds with what Martin said then, Geth?
Actually, I did listen to the podcast, luckily because we're on now as well. And it was broadly similar, actually, yeah. He knew I was going to do the planning right because I'm captain spreadsheet. I probably should have been a co-driver rather than the driver, really. Although similar in the sort of way as Martin is that sort of detail-oriented. And I planned out this biking holiday to Whistler. We went out and I suddenly found out that Martin was a lunatic on a bike, just like he is in a rally car as well.
It's fair to say he was probably more of a lunatic back then than he is now. He's a proper family man.
Yeah, definitely a family man.
A lot calmer now, clearly, yeah.
But I have to say, he's the only person I get drunk with, and I've done it consistently. Every time I go and catch up with Martin, I get horribly drunk.
Oh, right. Okay, you don't get drunk with me then.
Oh, I think I've lost you all then.
Right, fair enough. So he did say that you're a quick boy, so you just want to justify your quickness now then. Give us a little bit of a background as to how you fall in with this, with kit cars and things like that, please.
Yeah, I started off in auto testing years ago in sort of doing Welsh Championship, hiring cars from little rental places to start with, which is my way of doing auto testing for a nice cheap way to get in the motorsport. And then started rallying, ended up winning the KA Championship in 97. Got a chance to drive the F2 kit car in 98 because Gwyneth had gone to Seat and there was a car free which was run by Chris Birkbeck as a kind of a solace operation. We won the National F2 series in that, which was great. And then I got to drive the Puma the next year, but unfortunately it's when it had a rubbish gearbox made of toffee. So I didn't finish a rally in it. Had a lot of time. In fact, I met Martin's father on the Isle of Man because, actually it was on the Jim Clark rally. He was over scrutineering. And he found us doing an illegal service, trying to fix our car. He was very kind about it and just said, be off with you, which was great. And then after that, got a chance to drive in Italian Championship a little bit in an Opel Corsa Super 1600 or Super 1600, is it over there, which is a fantastic car. Managed to get a few wins out of it. And then at that point, the money dried up and I thought, well, better do something else. And managed to do a bit of circuit racing as well.
Okay. And you did the British Championship. Did you mention that one?
Didn't mention that. No, went back. I think it was 6-7 years ago, something like that. A little team based in North Wales in Wrexham. Went really to help out with a bit of coaching for James Grint and Alex Parpotas, and got a little drive in a Fiesta ST. Managed to win the category, so it was quite good. I remember going to the prize do, and sort of everyone was half my age. And they're kind of saying what you can do next year. And I think, as long as I can get some Saga sponsorship, we'll be okay.
Excellent. Okay. And we've been working together for the last 9 years on and off with various car manufacturers. So
yeah, we've known each other quite a long time, just like I've known Martin a long time now.
Yeah, you were his best man, weren't you?
I was my best man at his wedding. And there's some information from that will stay quiet. But then there's one thing particularly which I remember at Martin. You mentioned on the podcast about how detail-oriented he is and how he looks after what's in front of him. And he's one of the cleanest people I've ever got to know, which is really weird to say. Okay, I remember going to his house the first time I ever went to it, and I came home and told my girlfriend Hillary, who's still with me now. I said, I've been to a bloke's house who lives on his own, and it's cleaner than our house. It's like the cleanest house I've ever been to. But this came to fruition when we were on a sailing boat. Martin was doing the cleaning and tidying up after lunch, and he went downstairs to mop the floor up and kept finding more and more water until we realised we were sinking.
That was day one of my marriage. That's
it was. Oh yes, I was on his honeymoon as well. I forgot to say that.
That was the honeymoon, day one.
Yeah.
So, that was a bit worrying.
Imagine bringing Gethin Jones in your honeymoon with you. Fantastic. Right. Okay, folks, if you're watching, and I know you are, please get some comments in the comment column, especially if you've got any questions, just so we know that there's somebody out there and we're not just talking to ourselves. We're quite happy talking to ourselves. We do it regularly. But it'd be nice if you send some comments. Are you ready for your first questions, chaps? Because we're all going to answer these questions. Oh, okay. So I have actually, if you watched the show a couple of weeks ago, the first questions I got in, I asked the person to come on. It's the same today. So we have Mr. Luke Barry in Scotland somewhere. Hi, Luke. How are you?
I'm not too bad. Evening, gentlemen. I'm in the company of world and British rallying royalties. I feel out of place a little bit here, but we'll go with it.
Cool. Whereabouts are you?
I'm up in Edinburgh. So as you say, we've kind of got all different parts of the country, really, and far beyond in Canada. So we're going global, Trevor. It's fantastic.
That's excellent. Well, first off, I have to thank you very much for the piece that you put in Motorsport News this week, just talking about stage by stage and what this journey is all about. Deeply gratitude for that. That's been great. Just tell everybody what you do, just so we can give a little bit of an overview. It'd be good.
Okay, so I'm Luke. Tonight I see myself as a fan, but tomorrow morning I'm to my job at Motorsport News as the rallying reporter. Ever since I can remember, I've been watching British Rally Championship videos, VHS tapes, DVDs, everything, you name it. All three of you, actually, as when I was a child, so it's a bit surreal for me. I grew up in the Scottish borders where the Gin Cup Rally is, so naturally that was kind of where my interest came from. As you may guess, if you're growing up in that area, you either ignore it or you get involved in it. And thankfully, my parents got me involved, and it's led to be where I am just now. So, it's fantastic. I'm loving my job, and it's great to be here.
Excellent. So it wasn't that long ago that you joined Motorsport News. Before that, you were working in a marketing role in Scotland, just generically, weren't you?
Yeah, so I'd done freelance for Motorsport News for a couple of years. But when I left university last summer, I had to look for a job. So I took a generic sort of thing that was sort of related to my journalism degree, but I was always trying to break into it. Thankfully for me, at least, Motorsport News changed hands to Kelsey Media. So a job opening opened up. I stuck my hand up as high as it would go, and luckily they took me on. So yeah, I've been there for 3 or 4 months now, I think it is. So it's quite a strange time for all of us, of course. I joined when the coronavirus kind of hit, so it's been a bit strange, but there we are, such is life. The world is thankfully recovering as well as it can, so we're not going to try and go down that road. But yeah, it's been great.
And recently you got in touch because you wanted to speak to Martin about a piece that you did around the Isle of Man and what it takes to win on the Isle of Man.
Yes, Martin, actually, I'll be honest, of all the people I spoke to, there were a few. I used the most of what he had to say, which says he's very good. He's a very good speaker. So if he was nervous, he has no need to be. But yeah, I think it'll be last month that we had a piece on there, just whenever the Manx National was meant to run. But obviously the international name was returning with it this year, so I thought it'd be quite nice to go down memory lane. And for somebody like me, it's always great to get to chat to heroes, so it was an excuse to phone it, really.
Excellent. Brilliant. Okay, you've got some questions. I'm going to get them up on the screen here for you. So your first question.
Well, I do indeed. So obviously I'm not a competitor as much as I'd like to be, but a lot of the guys I speak to, they often will say that they suffer from post-rally blues and the post-rally hangovers and such like. But was that something that any of you ever struggled with? And if so, did you find a particular way to manage that? Was it something you did when you got back home that sort of reminded you of how lucky you were perhaps? Did you have any remedies for that?
Martin.
Okay, post-rally hangover. Well, we never went out and partied after the rally, so there wasn't a proper hangover. Obviously, we all just went straight to our rooms. No, yeah, I did suffer with that a bit because basically, for me it was my job, and for weeks and weeks in advance, you're really focusing on one goal, which is doing your best on that particular day. And maybe you've been testing, that's all you're thinking about, what the components you got to test, and it's really intense for a couple of days. Then you go home, you're trying to get yourself ready mentally, physically, and then they go to a recce. The recce is more important than the rally sometimes because you can be in the best setup, fastest car in the world, and if your pace notes are wrong or just you lose confidence in them because they're not accurate for any reason, you can have the worst rally ever. So the recce is super important, and then all of a sudden you're in the rally, and 3 days later on a world championship rally, it's all finished. So there's a huge adrenaline sort of drop. Your emotions, if you've done well, even if you've crashed or you've failed miserably, it's just this huge big hole. And for me it was like, okay, when am I next in the car? When am I next testing? What am I going to focus on next? So it was pretty difficult to deal with, and I just throw myself into going out bike riding or something just to get your mind active and thinking about the next few days to get yourself back in the game.
Excellent. Gethin.
Yeah, I'd say to start with, I didn't really have too many problems because I was working flat out. when I was working full time as a job, and I know that sounds a bit weird for people that know me, having a full-time job, at that point wasn't an issue because I was just straight back into work. But as it got more serious, definitely exactly the same. Used to hate coming back and trying to think of what to do next. And I used to punish myself physically, really, not with branches, but actually out on a mountain bike, which is one of the things I really enjoyed. And Martin knows from coming down riding as well. It was one of the things I was really into and kind of what got us to know each other better as well.
Excellent. So my take on it, especially long haul rallies, you go to Australia, New Zealand, you've probably got a pre-event test and maybe getting there a bit earlier anyway to acclimatise to everything. And you come back after that period, depending on how you did on the rally, it didn't really matter that much, but I always felt drained after the first couple of days. And it's one of those double whammies really, because you're back home after being away for 2 weeks or 2.5 weeks. Of course, wifey, girlfriend wants to catch up and do all the talking, tell her everything that's going on. And all you want to do is nothing for about 2 days. And it literally did last about that amount of time for me. So it was a real thing. And that's why I referenced it at the end of the first weekend of shows 2 weeks ago. Literally, when I stopped the live show, I more or less went downstairs, had a quick drink and went to bed and didn't wake up on Monday morning for a while, because the adrenaline just gets you there. Wasn't sleeping properly, and then when you do have that switch off time, it does last a little bit long. Has that answered it?
Yeah, I'd say that's perfect. One thing I will say is Martin says he's not had a proper hangover, but I've been told that the Isle of Man after parties were pretty strong. So there must have been one occasion at least.
I remember being in his bedroom after one, and it didn't stop at 12 o'clock. I know that.
Yeah, I remember. That sounds really dodgy, that, Trev.
It does, yeah.
Yeah, the Manx was special because it was the last round of the championship, and everyone was stuck on the Isle of Man, so no one could escape and go home. And everyone had finished their year, so to speak. So we would always, there was some drinks to be had afterwards. And I remember one particular year when we were with Renault, one of the Renault guys had set up some sort of driving game. I'm trying to think which one it was, and they had two split screens in their room, and they had bottles of gin and pastis and vodka, and they were playing drinking games connected to the driving game. And this was before our team dinner, so half of the guys were absolutely wasted before they started their team dinner. So probably that'll be the year we won the championship in '98. So that was a long night. I remember going into one of the nightclubs, and they all wanted to, I don't know what, and I tried to buy some like 26 double vodka and cokes or something. And yeah, that was a big night.
Yeah. Some big nights in Oxford as well, which we can't go there at 8 o'clock on a Sunday night, so we'll move on quickly. Of course, the one rally that everybody seemed to have a good time on was the Ulster Rally, the end of that in Belfast in the Europa Hotel, as it was originally. Those are some big nights, especially in 1999. Okay, before we move on to your next question, let's have a look in the comments and see who's here. John McLean, he says, Skid tell the watches. What's that story? You know about that one, Mr. Rowe?
Watches.
The watches. No.
I don't know what that means.
You have to give us a little bit more detail. So Willie Singham, that Mark II Escort, that's me in that Mark II Escort, 1983 Circuit of Ireland Rally. What's Martin's day job?
At the moment, well, for the last 10 years, we've been running a bed and breakfast up in Whistler. Luckily, we sold that last May. Lucky on many levels, obviously, with the current coronavirus situation. Tourism is non-existent here. But my wife and I and another guy set up a company doing driver development training. So we've been, Claire has been a fire department here in Whistler, and we've run some emergency vehicle operating courses for fire departments and search and rescue courses. And the last course we did was ATVs on like snow tracks for Caslow search and rescue. So we've developed some courses doing things like that. I also work for the Justice Institute of British Columbia, and we teach some of the police and sheriffs So yeah, some varied stuff. On Friday, I'm actually testing a racing car on Mission Raceway. So it's a Honda Type R time attack car. So I'm doing some motorsport stuff again. So bit of everything, which is good. Keeps it varied.
Excellent. Paul Hudson has asked. Sorry,
I also forgot. Yeah, I do volunteer ski patrol in the winter as well. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Paul Hudson has asked if you've ever done any racing.
I did do some racing once. Back in '93, Shell had this Polo Cup, and they were doing Polo One Make Championship race cars up at Knockhill, and they had a guest car, and I had the opportunity to drive that at Knockhill. So that was a good experience. I learned a lot then.
And
well, there was 3 cars in the team. Somebody had won a prize drive. I had this other guest car, and then somebody else, and I can't remember who the other 2 guys were, but on the second race, all 3 cars ended up in accidents. Totally unrelated. And mine wasn't my fault. I was just going, there's a right over a crest to the start line, and there was a guy got totally sideways facing to the right. I went to pass him on the left, and about 20 meters before I was going to pass him, he had full opposite left lock on, the back gripped, and he just came straight across in front of me, and I T-boned him.
Right, okay. Did you ever go racing again? He's froze on us. Terrible freezing. Okay, let's come back. We'll get Luke's next question up, and we can take that one. So, Luke, your second question then.
Okay, so this one was specifically aimed at Martin before I knew Gethin was coming on. So Gethin, I'll be honest, I'm not sure how you were with pressure, but if you did, basically, I said to Martin that if he ever succumbed to it, he didn't show it, but how do you deal with pressure as a driver, and can it sort of spur you on? Can it hold you back, and how do you sort of progress with that over time when you sort of learn more to deal with it? Did you find it was a progressional thing where you got better at managing it through your career?
Yeah, definitely. I have to say, to start with, I certainly noticed it in One Make Championship. So I did the Skoda Trophy followed by the KA Championship. And what was notable in the Skoda Trophy to start with is I was rubbish on the first stage in the morning. I didn't seem to get going. And I think that was partly just being a bit lackadaisical, partly a bit of pressure. And I started to learn through what I was doing with training, which is my normal job, which is what I do now alongside Trevor, around neuro-linguistic programming, basically about visualization techniques. And I was lucky that my girlfriend was involved in the business as well, and she understood it. So we started practicing in the week before a rally, rehearsing how I would feel. What would I feel like when I got to the start line of a stage? What would I feel like when I came to service? What would the people look like? What would the smells like? What would it feel like? And I eventually got a trigger, which was the way I put my glove on and the way I held the wheel. And that would switch me on, but also relax me. And that certainly helped with dealing with pressure. I wish I'd known a lot of what I know now from the training aspects. And I heard a great quote recently about pressure as a privilege. And I think if you look at it that way, you think, well, actually, pressure's not really an issue. I've only got the pressure because you're in a great situation.
Pressure of the privilege. Tell us more about that. What did you learn there?
That was from, I can't remember which Olympian it was. And they sort of basically talked about the fact that if you've got the opportunity, the only reason you've got pressure is because you're in a great situation. So it's a privilege to actually have that pressure. So why resent it? You shouldn't be stressed by it. You should think this is a great opportunity.
Yeah, for me, the pressure was something that we actually worked on. And if you feel that you're getting a little bit tense and you're starting to get nervous in a car, you tend to tighten up. Same driver, co-driver, same thing. And of course, with modern rally cars, when you're sat so low in them, you can't actually see out. So you're relying on having a sensitive bottom in order to feel the road. So clearly, if you're starting to tense up a bit, you won't have that feeling, certainly not to the degree that you should have. So I had a little trigger, and there's 2 things really. One is reset, or even just that. Is what I taught, what I learned through using a hypnotherapist, a sports psychologist, and that worked for me. If you felt that you were getting a little bit nervous, a little bit tight, then just reset. And it's something that I've used on and off over the years. Liz Linford taught me. We talked about this in the podcast, to do a little bit of meditation. So meditation is really important. The more you practice, the quicker it is to relax. And that's really an important thing, is being able to get relaxed as much as possible. So that's my take on it. And it's something that we'll be doing more of as we go through this process of stage by stage, trying to get to a quiet mind. And that's important. So cut out all the interference, all the distractions, and try and stay as focused as possible. Relaxed concentration is what it's all about. Martin, answer to the question then.
Sorry, that just threw me a bit there.
It's okay.
My internet went down and I was gone for a bit.
Was it a bear? Did a bear chew through the cable?
Pesky varmints. Let me see. Pressure. Yeah, I mean, the more you have to deal with a situation, the easier it gets. And I just remember being a bit phased. We had some huge opportunities early on. And, you'd see yourself in a car, but you'd look down the start list or at the other competitors. And, for example, Manx 97, there was 5 of us that could have won that championship going into that last rally. And it's very easy to sort of look at everybody else and think, what are they doing? And what tires do they have? How much power do they have? And all that sort of thing. And at the end of the day, you can just control what goes on in your car and, affect you, the co-driver, and everything you can do. So early on, I think, you would get wound up by everything and think about other people, which you can't control in any way. So once you did realize you could just focus on yourself and the things that you could affect, that helped a huge amount. I guess the biggest pressure we had was Corsica 2003. And I can't say I enjoyed that rally because, I enjoyed finishing it, but, it was 3 days where everything could have gone and we could have lost the whole championship. So we really did just knuckle down, blinkered, just think about every single corner, every count down the stages, the miles, and just focus on ourselves. So it was difficult to do, but you just got to control what you can control in your car.
It's quite interesting, that Corsican one, because the memory isn't one of pressure. The memory is one of just counting down miles and getting through it. And the weather was so changeable in that rally. And as I say, we seemed to nail all the tire choices, so that was quite good. And then Toshi slipped off, I think that was Saturday afternoon, wasn't it? He ran wide and clipped the back of it. That sort of took the pressure off a little bit more.
Definitely. We saw, you just say you shouldn't look at everyone else, but we saw the damage on the quarter panel of his car. We're like, yes, he's under pressure. Now he's under even more pressure. So, keep your eyes down, keep your head down.
Yeah, definitely something that you can work on. And I think certainly some of the modern drivers, and you see them being so miserable at stage end a lot of the time, they need to be able to enjoy themselves. And that's something I think that we did, Mart. We talked about it, that you maybe didn't enjoy the rallies and moved on really quickly to what the next thing was. But when you're there and you're competing, you should be able to enjoy yourself. You should have fun, because that's why you do it in the first place. Anyway, moving on to your next question then, Luke. So, third and last question.
Yeah, so thanks very much for that. I do find that actually quite interesting how you say that you're looking down the start list, Martin, and you find that sort of almost intimidating, but I guess that is something that would come with time. And now obviously you've ended up being a world champion, so it all works out. Final question from me is, were any of you ever sort of over fear? Obviously rallying isn't the safest sport in the world. We're all trying our best to make it as safe as we can, but there is always that element of danger. If you maybe say had an accident, was there a particular method you would use to put it behind you, or did you always find that say if you went back to that particular location the year after, it would be sort of mental block in your mind?
I'll take this one to start with, if that's okay. I'm getting a bit of feedback here. So I had a big accident in 1996 in Cavan, National Rally with Dennis Bickerstaff in a Metro 6R4, where we came from 120 mile an hour, probably 100 mile an hour anyway, to nothing in the space of about 80 meters. So it was a big impact when we stopped. We were facing back up the road in a dip, looking at a crest. Hey, whose dog is that?
That's mine. outside in the garden. It's quite loud, to be fair.
He's
You
noisy.
can tell he's Scottish.
So we this quite big accident and knocked the wheels off it. So the Metro was sitting on its belly in a dip, looking back up the road. So I literally was looking at a crest. And back then in Ireland, the cars were set off at 30-second intervals. So by the time we had the accident, I realised that I couldn't feel my legs, I was paralysed from the waist down. Dennis tried to get out his door, but it was wedged against a tree. So he had to get out through the windscreen. And you can imagine all of that took a bit of time. So I'm sat there waiting on a car, landing on top of me. And it was a very, very scary situation. It turned out to be muscle spasm. After about 40 minutes, I could start to move my legs and feel it. But that was scary. I ended up going to hospital that night just for a check over. Thought to myself for the first time ever, that's it. I got away with it. I'm never going to go rallying again. The following Thursday, we were in Scotland for the next round of the British Championship with Robin Phillips. So it didn't last very long. And for me, I think if you understand what caused the accident, if you understand what causes the crash, then you can put it behind you. You can take the learning and move on, especially if it's a driver issue or a passenger issue, whatever it may be. It's the ones where you don't know what happened that sometimes can trouble you, or a particular piece of road that maybe caught you out. Let's hear what Gethin has to say.
Well, what you just said there really resonates. Understanding the why behind it is really important. I never had a problem in getting back into a car. I have to say it was one of the things I could compartmentalize quite easily. The only time I ever kind of was a bit scared, not during it, but slightly after it, was on a stage in the Manx National in the F2 kit car. I think it was stage 4 of the rally. And on the first stage, we were competing against Gwyneth Evans, was also out there in the Ibiza kit car, one of his first runs out on tarmac. And he was much quicker on the first stage. And then we equaled him on the second stage. And I'm suddenly thinking, oh, okay, underpants are on the outside now, this is fine. And then I managed to destroy it by rolling it over a bridge and taking out a dry stone wall and ending upside down in a woman's garden. But the worst thing was they felt this fluid dripping down the back of my neck, and I knew the fuel tank was in the back. And I'd forgotten that also the water bottle for the washers was there as well. So at that point, as you're trying to get out of the car, that's when the nerves start to go. But I never really maybe stopped wanting to compete. As soon as you got the opportunity, you were straight back in the car again.
Okay. Martin?
Yeah, I think if you sort of think about the fear or anything like that, you're on a downward slope. I've never really thought about that. And if we have had an accident, and I've been very lucky, touching wood here, to only have a couple of accidents, but you just got to get back in. And yeah, if you can understand what happened or what went wrong, clearly it's never the driver's fault. I'd always blame the co-driver first. But
definitely.
No, I mean, we had quite a big accident on the Rally GB one year, and I remember David Sutton was saying it was like a bonus. We'd won the PWRC. Yeah,
Yes.
we'd won that.
Yeah.
And then Chris Wood was in the car.
Yeah. So he wouldn't pay me, so I didn't go.
That's something like that. I'm trying to think what's going on there. I don't know. But
Yeah.
the deal was, if you got to go for it, and if you're leading and you crash, it's okay. And sure enough, we were leading. We had this massive accident, 5th gear, and tore the wheels off it and all sorts of stuff. But we were just pushing hard, and these things do happen. And I do think if you're in a situation where you start considering all the things that can go wrong, you just diluting your focus, and anything you do, you've got to just think of the goals, and you're going to achieve them. And there's no fear. You shouldn't be doing it if you're going to be scared of crashing.
Did Barry Clark go off in the same place as you? Is that it?
Yeah, I literally, it was a big accident. It went on for quite a while. We went through this drainage ditch at one point, and I remember hanging onto the steering column so much it broke the steering column bolts off. And then there was a wheel missing, and the back end had gone a bit, and I put the diff lock on. I was trying to drive out, but the wheels were missing. But I got out the car, and the rear spoiler had hit a tree and had come off, and the rear light cluster was in the middle of the road. So I thought I'd ring Anna and tell her I've just crashed the car. So I thought I'd better explain myself. And I'm walking back up the road, and I was going to pick the light cluster up, and then I look up, and Barry Clark did exactly the same thing. Went wide on a flat out corner, hit the back end, and then he was like literally bumper to bumper coming down the road towards me. And I was like, "Do I go left? Do I go right?" And it was really sketchy, and pretty much landed 20 feet from where I was. Opened the door, and sort of the co-driver's door was still on. It was like, "All right, boys," and they're like, "What the heck?" So that was that one.
Yeah, I had similar experience with Burnsy in Finland. Oh God, what was that? It must have been 2000. He was in a Subaru. I was at the stop line. I was actually out for the day with Colin McMaster. Angus Watt and I went just to accompany him. So Angus and Colin were taking a few snaps of drivers at the stop line, and Burnsy just appeared around the last corner in midair and barrel rolled into a wall. So I ran down the road and clearly started to climb out and saw me, and he said, "What the are you doing here?" Was the first thing. There's a story about when he lost a necklace which was his grandfather's ring on it, which he went back into the car and got. But the fear side of things, oh yeah, and I've got this wonderful RB t-shirt, 10-year anniversary of when he won the championship. What a top bloke. And mentor to us all. So going back to the fear side of things, and there was a little bit of that, I suppose, when I stopped in 2005. There were a lot of people that were getting hurt and killed in rally cars. And it was at the back of my mind. It wasn't affecting what I did, but I did make a lot of mistakes in 2005, more so probably in the rest of my career. So maybe it was something in there. So yeah, if that starts coming into it, you need to walk away. You can't be sitting or you full focus split second time, and if anything's distracting you like that, you gotta walk. Mark,
can I just say, I do think it's completely different from a driver and a co-driver. There's no way I'd get in the car and sit next to me or anyone else. The driver has a totally different thought process because they should be in control. You've got the steering wheel and the pedals, whereas obviously you're massively relying on the co-driver and the information and everything, but at the end of the day you make the decisions that might make you crash or whatever, whereas the co-driver has to have complete and utter trust in the driver's ability to deal with all this stuff. So I've never had to deal with that sort of thought, but yeah, the co-driver must go through a completely different way of thinking about fear.
Yeah, just stupid. It's just stupid. That's all. Look, how's that? Has that answered your question?
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, I say, as I say, we're talking about fear. Something could actually generally sort of be irrational in somebody's mind, and I'm saying it's perfect, which isn't great, but it is. I would actually, obviously, I have no experience, but it does to me make sense. And for other co-drivers I've spoken to, from what Martin said there, is that it's such a different thing if you're in control of what's going on as opposed to sitting next to it, just watching it happen. But fascinating stuff from all three of you. It's a great privilege to be here, and I thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome. Thanks for your questions, Luke. You go and fire some sausages at that dog, and he'll
I was going to say, yeah, the dog's called Tilly. We'll give her a shout out. She's interrupted the live stream, so there she is. Yeah, thanks very much. All the best, gentlemen.
Cheers, Luke. Bye.
Cheers, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Okay. What do you want to talk about, champ?
I was just thinking about the fear thing, and like the driver has the information from the co-driver. You've already made those notes. The driver calls out, initially making those notes, how you think the car will react over these corners. You put all the information in, so it's all your information really. So there is way less sort of fear coming in. Even when you're driving, the risks, and it's a calculated risk. In some places you can push, thinking, yeah, if it goes a bit wide there, I'm okay. But the co-driver has to sit there and just give out that information, and in a way, apart from the recce, they have very little input on what they think. And if they're there thinking, shit, what about that big stone on the outside? If we go wide there, he didn't even mention that. What about that? Do I say anything? So it is a completely different way of thinking. I remember when we were competing in China, and we were in an underpowered, heavier car, and there was some real quick stuff there and we were taking chances to try and keep up with the other guys. And that's probably the scariest sort of fear type thing I've had to deal with, and literally sort of fifth gear with a light on in a Group N car, thinking, oh, and I'm really grimacing, thinking, shit, this is bad, but it all sort of worked out.
It's good, nice little segue there, because you need to tell the story about hitting the cottage.
Oh yeah, the cow. It was a water buffalo.
Expensive water buffalo.
Oh, sorry, John McLean. Bad John, you got it wrong. Okay. Oh no, he's frozen me again. Oh, he's there. Go.
Yeah, Rob Fagg was co-driving for me in China, and we'd done a couple of stages, and I remember I just glanced across at Rob on the road section, and he didn't have his belts on, so I said to him, come on, get your belts on. I remember him saying, oh, I trust you, and I said, look where we are, it's not me you need to worry about. So the road sections in China are same as Kenya or other countries like that. They're pretty much more dangerous than the stages, but we were driving along, and we come to some, I wouldn't call it a village. There was a couple of buildings, but there was really tall maize growing, probably 7 or 8 feet maize along both sides of the road. And there was a farmer, and he had this little piece of string to the mummy water buffalo with a ring through her nose. And then there was a smaller buffalo walking behind just fine. So I slowed down to about 60 kilometers an hour and give it a big wide berth. And literally, as we're going past, we just felt, well, it was just this impact, and we didn't hardly have any time to see what would happen. It was like being shot in the face with salt, and that was the windscreen breaking. And basically, Daddy Water Buffalo had jumped out of the maize field to get to Mummy Water Buffalo, and as its front hooves hit the ground, we hit this thing. And literally, the horn of this thing went in through the windscreen right in front of Rob's face, tore a massive big gouge up to the top of the A-pillar, and then smashed his side window, to the front wing, the radiator, the door, and we were like looking in the mirror. I was looking in the mirror going, what the heck was that? And yeah, it turns out we hit this water buffalo. So we stop, everyone starts coming round, and it was like, I had to laugh at one point because Rob had this white slobber all down the side of his face. It was water buffalo slobber. So this poor thing had spat this stuff down him.
Poor thing.
Yeah, that was a bit of a situation because, hitting a water buffalo in China, we were really in trouble with the locals. And I remember ringing the interpreter, and he's like, you just got to go. You got to get out of there. And they were about 2 minutes behind with some sponsors, and we had to just drive off and leave him to deal with it.
Wow. So rallying in China was a completely different experience to anything you'd done before. I went out there in 2003 for the first round, which was in Shanghai. It was a make-up tarmac rally. It was like a single venue event, but that looked quite amateurish, I suppose. But you certainly had a big learning curve going there for 3 years, wasn't it?
It was 05, 06, 07. And it was great at the time. There was a lot of international drivers there. David Higgins was there. Alistair McRae was out there. Jarmo Mietonen. There was people from all over. Cody Crocker. Lots of good competition. There was always points, not even full seconds between the top three. It was point whatever between the top three on each stage. So it was good. And I mean, an amazing country as well. We saw a bit of the country and completely different people and way of life. So interesting to see how other people live in the world.
Cool. Okay. Let's go. I've got another comment here. Question from me. Which was more nerve-wracking, going flat out on the edge with a pro like Martin, or sitting alongside an inexperienced driver on his first event? Without doubt, the answer is sitting with Martin. He caused me all sorts of shenanigans. I couldn't stand sitting with Martin. No, you were a maniac, John McElroy, a complete maniac. Didn't know where the brake was. If you go on John McElroy's Facebook page and look at the photograph of a Citroen Saxo doing something that you saw, those people are old enough to remember the Michelin cars that used to like splat. That's exactly what it looked like. So go on, have a look on that. I should be able Well, I'll stick it on some sort of feed after this anyway, so you can see it. So
as soon as I read that question, I just had the picture of that saxo.
Do you remember it?
Yeah, I've seen it as well.
Have you seen it?
That's one of the highest jumps I've ever seen, including Finland.
Yeah, you showed me the picture.
It was Richard Asquith's saxo, and do you know Long Cross with the tank ramp? So at the top of that, and you've literally, you know what it's like. You've got 100 meters, and then the road goes square right, and there's concrete all around you. So like the brakes don't work in midair. So it landed, gathered it up. I don't know how it got round it, but Richard Asquith was actually standing there when it landed. God, I thought he was going to have a coronary. So there's no competition.
I have to say, Trevor.
Yeah.
Trevor, anything else I can add as well about sitting next to journalists?
Yeah.
I did 3 rallies in KAs the year I was driving the F2 car, navigating for journalists. And one particular one was a journalist called Dan Strong, who I'd met, who was working for Evo magazine performance car. And I think he'd admit himself as well. It was probably the slowest, also most dangerous person I've sat next to in my life. It's incredible to understand how someone can be that out of control, but also going that slowly. It was very impressive skills.
Yeah. John did, over the years, certainly in the early days with Asquith, he did come on the odd test. I remember, I think he was with us when we went to Pembroke. Is it Pembroke? What do you call the rallycross circuit? Gethin.
Pembroke.
Pembroke, yeah.
Pembroke.
We went there. We got the Neil Brown engine in the car for the first time, and Neil Brown flew in his little plane to set the car up. John was with us then. That's when we got that engine ready to go and work on that. Neil Brown being the guy who prepared the touring car engines. Right, got another question for you. Has Martin held onto any of his old cars? McGann also. Right, 2 of your old cars are actually for sale at the minute, aren't they? Thanks for the question, Graham.
No, I haven't. But the McGanns come up recently for sale, and I'd love to have that car in the garage. I still think that car would be quite competitive, particularly here in Canada if I could get parts for it. But no, I'm lucky enough. Claire has her. Well, we recently got her old Clio sent over to Canada, so we have her Clio. It's an ex-Asquith car, 2-litre Clio. It was Group N spec then, proper gearbox and diff, all-in suspension. So that sat in our garage, and luckily we ended up getting Claire's dad's 1974 Mark 1 Escort, which is a full historic spec Group 4 Escort Mark 1. So they're sat in the garage at the moment. So I haven't got any of my own cars, but I do have things to play in.
Okay, one more question then, Paul Hudson. Any event in the world that you've not done but would love to have a chance to do? I don't know. We were pretty lucky between the Junior Championship and Group N. We ticked off most of the World Championship rallies. I mean, even we had the opportunity to do the Trans-Siberia Rally as well for Porsche GB. So that was another adventure. Richard Tuthill sat in with me, and we represented Porsche. And
How did that go, Martin?
Yeah, it was all going pretty well. There's a few stories there. It was. Basically, at the end of it, the car burst into flames in the middle of Siberia. But up until then, it was going to be an adventure. It was an adventure. Yeah, I don't know. Should I elaborate on those stories or not?
No, I was supposed to do that rally with you, but it was my nephew's wedding, so I wasn't able to do it. The Trans-Siberian thing, remember?
Yeah. That was the whole thing from start to finish. All the customs people in Moscow stole all our kit, and there was
apparently.
Yeah,
allegedly.
Very much.
So that was the drama before the start, and then we got stopped by the police on the way to documentation because Richard took us down a one-way street. It was actually the tram line for Moscow trams. So we nearly had the car impounded, had to bribe the police, and just to get to documentation. So that whole thing was an adventure. But eventually the car burst into flames in Siberia and set fire to about 200 meters of farmland, and a guy on a horse turns up really panicking because there's a village just down the road. So the 3 of us are there literally getting branches off trees and trying to beat this fire out. And yeah, that was pretty crazy. But anyway, I mean, back to the question, that we were very lucky in the World Championship rallies. We ticked most of the boxes there. And then I had the chance to do a bit of a longer distance adventure as well. So I've been pretty happy.
Cool. Gethin?
Probably wouldn't be a rally, actually. Probably Pikes Peak hill climb. But
cool.
back in the day with all the gravel.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be an amazing event to do. Probably not in a rally car. They got up there in these big V8 engined rail cars, so it look like the dirt race cars, and they just have a hilarious time up there.
Okay. I suppose rallies I haven't done. Where would I go? I think Beijing, Hong Kong would have been quite a good one. Hong Kong, Beijing, even the other way around. Or I could have done north to south. It would have been quicker. Maybe that one in this day, but nothing that springs to mind off the top of that. Right. One other question. Let's go back then to over here. Just bear with me a second. Right. This is a question then for Martin. You think using even a basic steering wheel and pedal setup on a game like Dirt Rally 2.0 can help with correcting and refining your driving, for example, steering position, throttle, braking? Something that you talked about on the podcast, but in a virtual side of things, you think it'll be a difference?
I honestly don't know anything about the virtual games. I haven't done any gaming, but if everything was set up properly and you've got the correct feedback and the steering wheel inputs are the same actually happening to your inputs to what's happening on the screen, I think, yeah, that's good. And the one thing I do know will, without the experience, the thing that you can work on is your concentration. Just sitting in front of a screen, really focusing and concentrating on pace notes, it's got to be a good thing. Okay.
And surely if you're talking about the feeling that you get in the steering wheel and the balance on the wheel, it's got to apply exactly the same thing. It's just nowadays with modern steering wheels, I'm sure there's the same sort of feedback that you can get. But okay, Gethin, any experience in this?
Only recently, yeah. I recently became 50, and because we're in lockdown, decided I can't do a rally, so let's treat myself to a little sim setup. So I'm still learning with it. And one of the things that Martin talked about there was, can you make it feel real, or can I make it feel accurate? Well, it's never going to feel 100% real because you haven't got that movement. But you can actually change the way the steering itself feels, the feedback, the force feedback to it. You can change the brake pressure, how far it comes in. Then things like throttle, is it going to be a linear throttle or progressive or rising rate? There's so much you can do that I'm only even starting to scratch the surface on. So I have to say I'm learning with it. But it's definitely helping with muscle memory. As you put more and more practice in, you start to become more and more consistent. So that's definitely helping, I think, a little bit if I was to go back and do something again now. But I think if you look at these top gamers, the people that translate across multiple genres, they actually use the real world and the virtual world. In circuit racing, you've got these top F1 boys that are fantastically fast in the virtual world, and they keep using that as practice for the real world. And I know in rallying, you've got someone like John Armstrong who does both as well.
Yeah, well, yeah, John Armstrong. If only we could get him on the show to answer the question for us.
How good a segue was that?
Oh, wow. It's almost as if you knew he was coming on, wasn't it?
It's like we set that up.
Right, you've got the question in front of you, Mr. Armstrong. First off, for those people who don't know, you just give a quick 30 seconds on who you are, what you've achieved, and what earns you the right to answer this question. And you should have tidied your bedroom before you come on.
I just noticed that, yeah. It's a towel from showering earlier.
Dirty cat. Martin Rowe will be there in a minute to tidy it up. Look at his face.
So I am John Armstrong, and I am a conventional rail rally driver, but I have a lot of knowledge, let's say, in the sim racing world. I went over to esports in 2018 and competed in the WRC esports. Managed to win that my first year, which was a surprise, but I really just put in what I'd learned from real life rallying into esports and the same sort of determination, and managed to win that. And off the back of that, I landed a dream job at Codemasters, helping developed Dirt Rally 2.0, and I'm still working there today. Really enjoying it. So yeah, sim racing's really taken off at the moment, and it's great to see, and it's good for the industry to keep growing now. And it's exciting times ahead for sim racing and esports.
Excellent. So this question then that Nathaniel Dillon, I think he's from Australia, Nathaniel, does Martin think, well, this is you, do you think that even a basic steering wheel and pedal setup in a game like Dirt Rally 2 can help with correcting and refining your driving? For example, the steering position, throttle and braking.
Yeah, 100%. As was touched upon earlier, it's all about muscle memory. Sure, you can read, you can have bad settings with your wheel, but as long as you're building up muscle memory that's similar to real life, then it's good. It's got to be good for training and keeping you sharp between real life events. You can change so many parameters with these modern steering wheel devices, like my Thrustmaster here. It's you can change the weight of the wheel, the way the self-aligned torque, how quick it comes back to the center, and how much force it has against you trying to come back to the center. I think that's a mistake a lot of people make when they start sim rallying is they don't look at their wheel settings. They just jump on with default settings, and they're never going to be correct because you've got two things to look at. You've got your in-game settings and you've got the settings of your actual wheel. If you've got your settings too high, it's like driving without power steering. You're fighting against the car's driving you, and it becomes really, really difficult. So you really want to dial in the settings, get something that feels like what car you drive in real life. If you drive one in real life, but if you're trying to become a real life rally driver, just, try to get something that feels realistic to you and train with that. You can change how much degrees of rotation you have, try to get something similar to your real life rally car. And just build up muscle memory. Try out different techniques for sure. Try putting your hands in a different position on the steering wheel. Try braking, differently. Whether it's trail braking or trying to not, overlap your inputs. And that's something that I, have done a lot with sim racing. I think a lot of people can get into, bad traits or learn bad habits on simulators as well, so you have to be quite careful not to do that as well, because it's not going to work the same way in real life. You can get away with some things that perhaps wouldn't last in a real rally car. Like holding your foot on the brake for a long time, you're obviously going to start boiling the brake fluid. But yeah, it's definitely applicable to real life rallying, and anyone can afford a entry-level steering wheel and get started with sim rallying. It's the brilliant thing about it. It's very affordable for everyone.
It's a bit different to when I won my competition, because as you know, I was a champion in 1996 on the Network Q Rally. Sega Rally, I won the competition for the whole weekend, got myself a Sega Saturn and a Sega Rally game. So there you go. It's moved on a little bit since then, maybe, has it?
100%. Like it's growing so much, Trevor. It's unbelievable what we have nowadays.
They've got colour screens and everything now, Trev.
You don't have they got valves, these tellies? Like,
there's one thing I would like to know. If you program whatever you want to play, to say you want to go to do a particular rally and you put in a stage name, how accurate is that stage in your pace notes compared to that real road? I mean, if you were to go to a rally nowadays, if you're new to a rally, trying to learn, you get 2 passes on the recce, and if you played the game, would that be of benefit? Is it that accurate from a recce point of view and learning the road?
Yeah, I think, it depends on the way you look at it. If you're going to go and do an event with organizers' pace notes, and you're not making your own, obviously you can play with the ones in game, and we try to make them as accurate as they can be, and as close to organizers' pace notes as they can be as well. So the people that don't make their own notes will be familiar with what Phil Mills is telling them, and they'll know how to react to each call. But it's something that's quite it has a lot of potential. I think we're seeing some crews actually pairing up using the real co-drivers. They're writing notes for the sim rallying stages, and then they're going through it, and the co-driver's reading it to them, and they're driving. And I think that's a brilliant thing. Obviously, you can run out of stages quite quickly. You start to learn them as well, which is something that you don't really do as much in real life. Sure, you have repetitive stages in certain rallies. If you go to Rally Spain year in, year out, they use the same stages. But it's definitely a good tool for learning your trade, on writing pace notes, and then it's really good for keeping your mind sharp, listening to the pace notes and reacting to them. But ultimately, you want a fresh road every time to make it effective.
Excellent. Gethin, anything you want to ask? Now's your chance.
I suppose the key thing for me was just learning how to get everything set up from a wheel point of view, and I've had to ask lots of questions to try and learn about it, because everything you look at on the internet, people have a different idea. I think what you've said there has really hit it for me, is that you got to get it set so you feel comfortable with it, and find that sort of general adjustment. I've been trying it in the little R2 Fiesta rally car, and having driven a real version, which is what you've driven as well, a 600cc one rather than the R3T or R2T got, but you can definitely make it feel pretty natural. The only thing you haven't got is that movement, but it definitely helps with that transition, like you say, of being able to understand how you can get it to drive on different stages. What do you think about the most recent thing that's happened as well, with lots of true competitors as well going back and doing the e-racing, and you see that with circuit racing as well, and recently the Formula E competitor, Daniel Abt, who drives the Audi Formula E team, has used a gamer to drive for him, and has since lost his drive because of it. What were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's it's been really good to see the real world drivers come across back into sim racing during the pandemic, and we've seen some good points to do with this. The likes of Charles Leclerc and all of the F1 drivers taking part in multiple, not just the F1 esports, but multiple other disciplines as well. And it's been really nice to see that. And I think it's, sim racing's got a huge boost in following and viewership because of this. And it's good to see. But yeah, we've also seen that we have to respect sim racing, as it has to be dealt with in the same way that you would in a real race, because you take away the fear factor, and drivers want to win, and you quite quickly get frustrated. And we've seen some incidents that we didn't want to see, especially on the likes of iRacing. Drivers swiping each other off on purpose, and other things that we won't talk about. But you have to be very careful as a driver. You're in front of thousands of people, and you have to perform in a professional way and take it seriously. So yeah, it's been really good to see, and hopefully it keeps growing.
Excellent. John, thanks very much for coming on.
Thank you.
Much appreciated. I know you were busy today with all your sim stuff. Oh, how did you do? You were rallycrossing today? Quickly.
Yeah, I didn't do too well. I finished 4th in the final, so just missed out on the podium. But some of the sim racing guys are super quick. They, like we were touching upon earlier, they've just built up crazy amounts of muscle memory, and they can do the same lap time each lap. And if you're dropping 0.4 a lap to them, it quite quickly adds up. So it's probably more competitive than real life motorsport. There's just fine details that you have to focus on, and it takes a lot of practice as well. But I've got a lot of stuff to do at the moment with working and different competitions, but I'm just trying to enjoy it, and that's the main thing, I think, is to enjoy it and try to do your best.
Excellent. And still working on the real rally comeback at some point in the future when things calm down a bit.
100%, yeah. You have to keep at it.
Yep. Thanks, John. Thanks for coming on. Much appreciated. If you want to learn a little bit more about the sim racing side of things, a good place to go is the Absolute Rally website. John has done 3 or 4 different segments on it. Just search for his name on the website. Really good resource. I can definitely advocate Absolute Rally. It's one of the best podcasts there is on the planet. Isn't that right?
Oh, these links are seamless, Trev. I have to say, these links are just getting seamless.
Wow, that's a lockdown haircut if ever I've seen one.
No, I'll be honest with you, the kindred spirit there to my right is Martin. I'm just not quite as committed to it as Martin at the moment, but it's coming, brother. It's coming.
I like good work there.
Yeah, thanks, man. Can I just before Trev jumps in, because I realised that I'm a guest as opposed to being a host at this point. When Trev texted me today, I went, 2 out of the 3 people that you want me to join on this call, I've been teammates with, and one of them I really wanted to be a teammate with. Which one was it? Well, the expression on Martin's face gives it away. We were never teammates, certainly. We'd never reached those dizzy heights, but Willie Rushton there, Gethin Jones.
Thank you very much.
It's commitment, that. Of course, we will be teammates at some point, which is a bit weird, but still, there you go. So, thank you for accompanying on my run today, Martin and Trev. So, I did a mega long run today, and you were there all the way through. So you got me through it. You got me through it, especially, Martin, when you started talking about hiking with dumbbells in your bag, and I was 9 miles into my 10-mile run, and you got me through that last mile, brother.
Yay.
So there you
Excellent. Go. Okay, do you want to just introduce yourself from the Absolute Rally side of things? We're talking about Fiesta R2s. Mr. Jones was there, so it's a good opportunity just for those people listen to Absolute Rally, just if we can educate them.
Oh, okay. Well, Absolute Rally was is a weekly podcast, which obviously Trev is one of my wingmen normally on that. Martin's been on, Gethin's been on, everybody's been on at some point, and we tend to do stuff that's going on, obviously, in the news, which we've been robbed of for obvious reasons. So we've been doing some bits and pieces. We did a 95 special to look back on the 1995 season quite recently, which is possibly our most downloaded couple of programs that we made, because we made the 95 season from every other aspect other than the aspect from Colin, of course, winning the championship. So we had somebody on from Ford. We had John Millington who was with the Boring team running that at the time. We had Derek Dornacy from Mitsubishi. Of course, we had DR join us from a Pro Drive point of view as well. Nicky joined us from a Toyota point of view. So we tried to cover every aspect in 95. So we're putting out content at the moment, but we will be having a break soon, and hopefully we'll come back with content which is a bit more relevant to what's going on that particular week in the not too distant future. But we are available on all available platforms, what the good podcasts such as Stage by Stages as well, so you can find us there. Anyway,
couple of
used
things.
to doing this, Trev.
I know. So first and foremost, I want to thank you. I wouldn't be doing anything like this without the practice that I've been able to do on Absolute Rally over the last couple of years. It's been great to be part of it. Incredible the tenacity you have, just the way that you get through it. So close to 200 episodes, I'm sure now. How do you do it week after week?
Do you know, it's a really good question. I think it's just I'm very of the mindset of I have to keep going, and I'm really, really adamant that we have to put something out every week. So it's very, very important to do that. But what's more important, I'm going to have to leave you at this point because I'm on my own and my little boy's crying.
All right.
So okay. I'll be back in 2 minutes, boys. I'm really sorry because I'm home alone.
No problem. We can work around that. No problem. There you go. Things change, don't they? How's your girls going on? Have you got a mum for them yet?
Yeah.
Has she arrived back?
Yeah, Claire's back from biking, so that's all good.
Right. Well, that's really important.
Yeah, my partner's drunk, so I haven't got to worry about it.
Right. Let's see what people are saying. Who have we got? We got a special guest coming in.
Toby,
someone's just delivered me a coffee.
Oh, that's nice. Lovely, isn't it? Nobody's
It's
delivered me.
Claire.
Thank you.
Okay. Tell her you're on telly. Right. Graham Henderson's asking a question. Has Martin held? No, we've done that one. Sorry, it's this one. Done that one. What's your preferred surface, boys? Let's go with you, Mart.
It depends what car you're in. I mean, in a way, like a Group N car on tarmac is normally not that fun because you've got to be really efficient. You can't really drift the car around or anything like that. You've got limited power, limited brakes, and a weaker gearbox. So you've really got to be thinking about keeping the car in one piece. But a four-wheel drive car on gravel is great fun. You can do some bigger skids and you can still have some fun and be fast. But then if you get the likes of the McGann that we've mentioned, or even a Puma, those F2 cars, Super 1600 cars, the light cars are really good on tarmac. So yeah, asphalt rallies in a McGann or a Puma will be really good. But if you're in a four-wheel drive, I guess snow, gravel, lesser grip surfaces is more fun.
Geth?
Yeah, I'd probably say exactly the same thing, really. A Super 600 car or an F2 car on tarmac was just absolutely amazing to drive. It's one thing I remember from the podcast. Martin mentioned about how he changed his driving style, but also noticed how he was a more relaxed person, part of because he was talking about what was Lizzie Linford. And I think with the F2 car, you needed to be so on it, on a Super 600 car as well, particularly, to really get the best out of it, to grab it and drive it to the maximum. And those things on tarmac were just phenomenal to drive. So definitely, yeah, it'd be a sealed surface for me.
Cool. You need to get your torch on, Geth.
The lights on.
Mine definitely snow and ice is just amazing. Tarmac's good, but from a co-driver's point of view, you like to skid about a little bit. I remember Corsica actually in the 206 World Rally car, and everybody'd say, yeah, that must be the ultimate. But you felt nervous because there's no room for any error. You run wide, you slide wide, you're in trouble. And it wasn't a great experience. It's great to be part, don't get me wrong, a 206 World Rally car and tarmac and one of the best tarmac rallies in the world. But from thinking about what could potentially go wrong, that wasn't great. But snow and ice, I always tell the story. You go to your first test on snow and ice, and Robert Reed and I have had a conversation about this, and it's just the weirdest thing. You struggle to get to the car to get in it because you can hardly stand up in your racing boots. And you get in the car, and if the driver's been down the road once, it's just the weirdest feeling. You get this butterfly feeling in your stomach, it goes into your mouth, because your body, your muscle memory is not used to anything like that. And I liken it to a moving walkway that isn't moving, and you're trying not to do the big step onto it. So that whole thing of sliding about in a rally car, those speeds on snow and ice, when you haven't been used to it for a while, is weird. Did you ever get that as a driver, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, it's just to get your head around the grip. Like you say, you get out the car and you fall on your ass, but you've been doing 120 miles an hour and it's fine. Just the whole testing and Sweden in particular, I remember I jumped in the Group N car in 03 with Stig, and Stig is a legend on any surface. Stig Blomqvist this is, and especially on snow and ice, it's his home rally and everything else. But the one thing I picked up from, I would look at the road and I'd have in my notes, I'd have distance, corner, and I'd identify every corner. And just sitting in the car with Stig, there wasn't any straights. There was just, the car was just floating and fluid the whole time, and just sat in with him. Just the feeling you had, the car literally was just floating and drifting between all the corners, and that was the one thing I always remember. So from a co-driver's point of view, and you in particular getting in and the feeling, tarmac, you get bumped around all the time, and gravel, yeah, it's the same, but it must just feel like you're not in touch with the ground. So crazy feeling, but really cool.
Cool. Right. I'm looking forward to this one. Roy Dempster. Hi, Roy. Great question. One stage in the McGann, which stage would it be? You have a think as well, Geth. I know which stage I'll be on.
Yeah.
Is this going to be the Isle of Man, or is it going to be?
It's initially I'm thinking Isle of Man and the Baldwins. West Baldwin down there. You're literally, in my notes, it's 3s and 4s, so they're pretty much flat out the whole way. And then you come over a crest. You got 100 meters or so before a hairpin left, and it's like you haven't even breathed for 10 minutes because it's like light speed all the road, and the hedges coming towards you. But then I sit back and think, well, Bunnings, Australia, and I've got a fantastic photo on the wall downstairs of the McGann 3 or 4 feet in the air over the Bunnings jumps. So tricky. I guess I'd have to go with the Manx because we won that one and we won the championship. So a better feeling all round.
That jump.
That jump, yes. That jump, different year.
Yeah. This is the one that you're talking about on the podcast. If you look at the door mirror that you mentioned.
That's the one. Yeah, we that whole rally, just like going off on a bit of a tangent, that whole rally, we were feeling great and everything. We'd worked really hard. The car was just perfectly set up, and I think I said the way it felt was like a little bubble of invincibility on that rally, and we could do anything with the car. And you come confidently over a crest, you know exactly you can brake for that hairpin the other side and when to hit the brake pedal, and just that whole event was perfect for us. And I remember clipping that mirror, and it's my side as well. Normally, if you're going to experiment with the width of your car, you do it on the other side, but that's my side, and we just clipped
cool
something. But yeah, happy days.
All right, excellent. Gethin, you got a McGann.
Oh, fantastic.
Where are you going?
I'll probably break it, so I'm not going to worry about it too much. At the moment, I'd have to say probably my road down to Usk, because I know the road really well. That'd be fantastic. But back in the day, I was thinking about probably in Ulster, actually. And you'll have to help me with the name of the stage. It's the one on the coast road on the north. Which goes
Torhead. Easy, two syllables.
Tor and head. Amazing stage. Absolutely incredible all over the crest. I think that would be a phenomenal stage.
I agree. I definitely think to be in the passenger seat on the Glen Torhead stage, so a combination of the two of them, or Hamilton's Folly, something like that, or even a stage we were talking about 2 weeks ago with Rory and the boys, Sally Gap in the Wicklow Mountains would be an awesome stage as well. Or Knockalla. Loads of them.
Yeah.
Right. Martin, you tell a really good story. I want you to try and explain to our viewers what it's like to be in full chat in the McGann. Because people loved that car, didn't they?
I mean, the car was impressive, just sat there, not even running. You look at the thing and it's big, wide arches, and the stance of the thing was really wide and low in the tarmac spec. But I mean, on gravel, that thing to come out of a hairpin and just feel for the grip or off a start line, first gear, you're literally, it's like you give it 2 or 3 millimeters of throttle, and then if a wheel spins, you come back to 2. If you got grip, you go 3 millimeters, 4 millimeters, 5 millimeters. If you feel that the traction leaving through your hands, you'd feel it. You'd lift off again. So you're just trying to be in tune with the thing all the time, and then once you can gain that momentum, you go up through the gears, and the car, I don't know, maybe the time we had in the car and we were just feeling so confident and comfortable with it. You could literally, if someone says, I want you to go 27 degrees sideways, you could do 27 degrees. And if you want to do 29, you do 29. So some of the best moments I've had with that car have just been setting up for hairpin corners. So you might be flying down a road in 5th or 6th gear and you've got a hairpin and you can just brake. You hold the car in a slide or whatever angle you want, planning for the time when you can come off the brake at the right point to go into a turn of a hairpin. So you're holding the car, you haven't moved the steering angle at all, you lift off the brakes, then it just comes around, you straighten up and away. The feeling was just incredible when it was going really, really well.
Yeah, it was quick, but I definitely remember in the Isle of Man beating you in an old Aster, so it can't have been that quick. Attention to detail, Roy Dempster having the accident in Ian McGann, that's detail. Rory Candy, whoever the hell he is, asked Martin about the time he ended up in hospital in China on the eve of a rally. Excuse me.
Yeah, that would have been 05, and the rally's called Lo Pang Shui, and middle of nowhere.
Smooth.
And I remember I wasn't feeling great, and I woke up in the night and I pretty much, to go into detail, I was puking out black stuff every 15, 17 minutes. And it was like 4 a.m, and the guy who would look after us, Johnson, a legend of a guy, Johnson Lee, I didn't want to wake him up in the middle of the night, but I knew I was feeling pretty gross. And anyway, I waited till about 6 o'clock in the morning and then rang Johnson and said, look, I've got a problem here. I'm puking out this black stuff. And he came along, and there was this Toyota Hiace van with a deck chair in the back of it. And that was pretty much an ambulance over there. And I remember the guy, and he sees me, a Laowai, a Western guy, and I was like creased over, and Johnson's trying to put me in the back of this van, and I sat in this plastic plastic chair, and I knew what was going to happen, but I was so out of it. I sort of looked towards the back door of the van as the guy hit the gas, and I slid all the way down and hit myself on the back door of the van in this stupid chair and fell on my back. But he was like, "Whoa, I'm going to get this guy to the hospital as quick as I can." And I ended up, they thought I had appendicitis at one point, but because I was a foreign guy in a really out there Chinese hospital, everyone would come around with these students and give me a poke and a prod, and it was pretty gross in there. There was bits of meat and like blood and stuff all over the floor. I don't know. I didn't really notice when I went in, and I remember Rory coming in and just saying, "Whatever's wrong with you, you need to get out of here right now, because whatever it is, if you stay here, it's going to be." And then they moved me from the general ward to a room when it had one bed in it, and I was still a bit out of it, and I was on a drip, and I remember trying to phone someone, and I had to hold my drip, and my arm was getting sore, so I had the bottle of whatever they were putting into me, and my arm was getting sore on the way over there. So as my arm went down lower than my hand, the blood was coming out of my arm and going into the bottle. I've got a picture. I think Rory took a picture at that point. And it collapsed anyway, there's a vein missing in my arm now. But anyway, I went into this other room, and I wasn't sure if I'd wet myself or the bed was warm. And
nice.
No, I was pretty ill. And after a couple of minutes, I started feeling better. And then I realized that it was warm. And I think they'd just got a local guy who was ever maybe private medical care and turfed him out of his posh room and put me in it. But long story short, they put some drip into me, and I came out of hospital, and we went and won the rally. So I have no idea what they used to put in me, but it was pretty good stuff. We won the rally.
Yeah. Need more
Castrol, probably.
Brilliant. Yeah, Castrol. Yeah. Thanks for the question, Mr. Rory Candy, wherever you are, Donegal. Say hi to Jared. Hi, Jared.
Hi, Jared.
Hi, Jared.
Johnny McLean. Now, Gethin, have you ever driven a World Rally car?
I've only ever driven one. I've never competed in one. Luckily got to do a bit of driving in an Escort WRC car for a little bit. That's only because the team I was doing some stuff with, there was a car there as well. So I managed to blag a go.
Excellent. And what do you think?
Yeah. I thought it was bloody fast. It was great fun. Just keep pulling gears until you can't pull any more gears, and at that point start concentrating really hard. That seemed to be the approach.
Okay.
It's very much of the school that you were talking about the other day of, fingertips on so you can really feel the car and concentrate like hell.
Okay, fair enough. Mark?
I've never competed in one. I really wished I had the opportunity, but I tested one for the All-Stars team for ProDrive many years ago down at Phil Price's rally school in Wales, and it was All-Stars rally team, so it wasn't full spec, but it was really impressive. Just it wasn't so much the speed of the car, but just the efficiency of everything, the weight transfer, the suspension, the gear ratios, differentials working so well. That was the impressive thing. And since then, I've sat in them and set them up for other drivers, but not actually competed in them.
I see. Okay, let's check on this man to see if Johnny's okay. Is he fine?
Johnny's fine now. Mummy's just come in at the nick of time. So I think he's got a bit of trap wind. I'll be honest with you, fellas. Not that you needed to know that. Any you watchers or indeed listeners needed to know that. But still, there you go. He was a very upset little boy. So apologies for that.
Okay, how's his collection of cars coming on?
Well, it's funny you should say that, because next to me right now is this one.
Oh, nice.
Very good.
Okay.
There you go. A little bit of improvisation on the rear spoiler.
Yeah. Okay. It goes in my T-shirt. Look, 10-year anniversary. All right.
Right. So apologies for that, gents.
Okay. Can you remember where you were? What we were talking about before you had to leave us in that rapid hurry?
No, I'll be honest with you, I can't.
You're telling us about how you've ended up doing this podcast for all these years.
Just purely bloody mindedness, really, and to try and produce something which I kind of want to listen to, which sounds a bit up myself when I say it like that. But as you know, Trev, because you've been on it for such a long time now, if I hear my voice on my own podcast, it really does my head in, which is why I've got people like you and Ryan and Jack and the amazing guests that we get as well. So the trick is, if I was just a producer now, I'd be quite happy. I think I've lost that look at me gene now that some people have, I think.
Okay.
So
what have you got coming up then? You said you've got a couple of, we've got a question thing that we want to do in the next couple of weeks. Is that right?
Yeah, because we haven't really ever had the chance to ask each other. There's loads of things that we can talk about kind of off air, if you like, when we text each other and stuff like that. But I've never really had the chance. There's stuff I'd like to ask you, and there's stuff I'd like to ask Ryan, and there's stuff I'd like to ask Jack. And I think obviously it's like a party game, isn't it? It's almost like you need two questions and you can go off on so many tangents. And the idea is that we all get to ask each other a question, so it goes in a circle and we see where we end up. It might be absolute dog doo-doo, or it might be a stroke of genius on my part, but I guess we'll find out when we do it.
It's a bit like the Absolute Rally Christmas pub quiz.
Very much so. It's either genius or absolute dog doo-doo. So yeah. There you go.
Brilliant. Okay. Are you staying with us for a little while?
I'm going to stay. I've got some. Can I ask a couple of questions? Am I allowed?
Yeah, of course you can.
Well, it's obviously to the guest of honour this evening, which is to Martin.
Okay.
Mart, listening today, and it made me think quite a lot about a period of time that I was, in inverted commas, the bobble latter, where I was going out watching tons of rally and struggling to kind of find a way in, and I was going to watch rallying with a couple of mates of mine from Liverpool. Now, rallying's not a big sport in Liverpool, and I've often kind of used all these analogies and joked about it and everything else, but genuinely isn't. But this is pre-internet we're talking here. We're talking probably 96, 97 when we were out watching kind of rallies and stuff like that. And Mark, you sounded like one of us. So we came to the conclusion that you were one of us, believe it or not. So you got tarred with the scouse brush. Now, I apologise for that. But I know the Isle of Man's very close to us. But is there any kind of Scouse genes at all in the Rowe kind of family tree?
Not that I'd admit. No, there isn't. The Rowe family were down south of England, Cornwall, Plymouth. But I do know, growing up on the Isle of Man, everyone seems to be a bit of a Scouse accent over there.
I think the Isle of Man's a witness relocation program, isn't it? I think that's where a lot of people end up when they've been in some kind of mither or something like that. One last question before I let Trevor have his own show back. F2 is something which I go on about so much because I was out watching it genuinely as kind of like a bobble at, and obviously we're seeing you in the Golf, we're seeing you in the Maxi. Did you try any of the other cars, Mart? Did you test any of the other cars? Did you sit in any of the other cars? And were you able to kind of back to back? Where were they in the scheme of things, the ones that you drove in some kind of order?
I drove the Renault, drove the Puma, drove the Golf, obviously. So very little knowledge about the others, to be honest.
Okay. Okay.
I just like from the stages and the times, you could see some of them were maybe more stable in certain situations, so they were faster on the wide stages. Some of them would be narrower and better on the twisty stages, and some reputedly had 5 brake horsepower more, maybe. But the way the times and their competitors were so close, I think they've all got to be pretty similar, and maybe there's a couple of compromises in certain areas, but on a playing field, I think they must have been pretty close.
Last one, sorry, Trev.
Yeah.
Did you realise, Mark, the amount of work teams that we had, and obviously the drivers that we had, and some of those drivers kind of went on and everything else? For me, it's the period of the British Rally Championship, which I really shot down on so many times when I've been doing Absolute Rally and talking to people about it. But for me, it's the absolute pinnacle of the British Rally Championship. Were you guys who were in it at the time, were you really aware of what was going on? And I suppose the benefit of hindsight, looking back now, you see it now and go, wow, we were part of something special.
Yeah, I at the time you don't realise it. And I did say this to Trev the other day. It was one thing I did wish I'd done differently, but you're so wrapped up in what you're doing. You're focusing so much on the next test, the next event and everything else. You don't really look around what you're doing. You've got this focus on the next thing. But yeah, looking back now, there hasn't been anything like it. There was lots of manufacturers, there was lots of big names who went on to become, world rally drivers and everything. So I'm very pleased and proud to be involved in it then. I don't think there's been any other championship with so many different drivers and so many different teams at such a high level. So yeah, we were lucky.
Gethin, you're involved a little bit with the F2 cars. So
I am, absolutely. And my keys just arrived as well. That was the reason I just got my commute as well, which is fantastic.
Is that cup really big or is your head really small?
It's an absolutely giant cup. Or is it far away? But that's Father Tedder, isn't it? Yeah. I was lucky enough to spend a bit of time in the F2 Escort. It was an interesting year with it because there was a lot of development to do on the car, even though I didn't really know much about it, because they'd gone away from having the twist beam they were allowed the year before. So they went to a locked beam, which is because apparently they shouldn't have really had it. So that changed the way the car handled. We also went to dynamic dampers. So I was lucky to get a bit of testing in the car and start to learn more and more about it. But to start with, I was so far behind the car. It just starting to really understand. Coming out of a KA with 60 horsepower to an F2 car with 250 horsepower, for example, it was quite a shock. But as soon as you get your head into it and understand what they can do, it's just an amazing car to drive because you have to grab it by the scruff of the neck. And I think that's the one thing that you had to really get your head around was just how hard you could drive that car. Yeah.
For me, at the time you didn't think. I was still kicking myself to say I'm getting paid to do what I love. It's only when you go to San Remo, Mart, and you probably experienced this as well, from us in an Astra, which probably lagged behind on tarmac to a McGann, and McGann would lag behind in comparison to 306 Maxi, which would probably at that time lag behind between a Citroen Zaro kit car with a tricky diff.
I remember doing that rally, and we went to watch, I think it was Bugalski off the start line, and the thing had traction control, it had everything, and there's some rumor that it actually lowered itself before the start lines, so it had active suspension. But I just remember there was like 2 bits of rubber, a gap, 2 bits of rubber, a gap, 2 bits of rubber, just like all the way up the road. And this was their traction control system. And I sat on this, like, went back to the car to get in to start mine, and I was like, oh my God, that's what we're up against. And then all the way through the stages, coming into sort of, or exiting anything from sort of a 60-degree corner or tighter, 60, 70, 80, 90-degree corners and hairpins, you just kept seeing these little dots of rubber everywhere, and it just get into your head thinking, what the heck is in that thing? So amazing pieces of machinery.
I think Günther Steiner was out there with the All-Stars team, because I've known Günther from years and years, and he said to me, Trev, the way he does, if you've watched Günther Steiner on the Formula One program on Netflix, you'll understand that he can be a bit direct when it comes to that. Tony Simpson, we have a question for you.
Oh, dear.
Roy Dempster, here you go. One for you.
Can we get Tony to get Martin and Trev signed up? Roy Dempster, if you think they're not already signed up, you're a very naive man. It's a kind of given. And I know I keep on saying it's coming. It's a bit like Dr. Dre saying he was going to do another album. It is coming, I can assure you. And all joking aside, I talked about it before, the 95 kind of documentary that I made was very much in the idea of trialing to make a documentary as opposed to just linking a load of words together and a load of interviews, which would still be great. But I wanted to give it some atmosphere and kind of build a picture and maybe give something back to people who maybe weren't there. And yes, there's YouTube videos and stuff like that, but to create a little bit of atmosphere. So it's definitely whetted the appetite to do it. In fact, I'd probably say I'd love to do more documentaries than do normal absolute rallies now, but that's our kind of bread and butter, and that's what we do every week. So I can't say that, but yes, they are signed up. Is the short answer. It's a done deal. It's already in the bag.
So Roy wouldn't let me off without a supplementary question, which would be clearly when. On record now, we're going to commit to it. We're going to do it.
We are going to do it. I've got a list. I'll be honest with you, right? On my phone, I'm picking up my phone now.
Don't go all Boris on us.
No. I've got on my notes on my apart from a workout for a kettlebell there, which I'm just looking at, I've actually got an absolute rally thing. I know you can't see it on the screen at the moment, but there is a list of people that I want to talk to, and it will take a lot of time to put together. It's not something that I'm going to knock up in a week. Whether it'll be in 2020, I don't know, but it will definitely, the production of it will start in 2020. I can say that.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, let's go back to the questions. Rob Fag. Martin, what are your thoughts on the rallies and more importantly the stages in Canada? We were talking about Rob earlier. That's the car actually that he nearly got wiped on, isn't it?
Yes, that is.
Looks a bit like it.
They
Okay.
fixed the windscreen now though. Stages in Canada, there's a good championship here that unfortunately, just to go from west side of Canada to about 5 or 6 days to drive there with the trucks. And I did my first rally. I met the guys from Rocket Rally and Squamish, and we went to the airport, and I didn't ask where we're going or anything. And we jump on the plane, everyone's together, and the pilot's like, yeah, blah, blah, blah. The flight time's 6 hours. And I'm going, 6 hours? Where the hell are we going? And we were only going over to the other side to compete. So, there's not that many people compete in the whole championship and commit to the whole championship because of how far it is apart. But because of that sort of, there's so many different types of stages. We've got some mountainous stages. We've got stages with lots of elevation. We've got some stages locally here. It's like in rainforest, so all the dirt's different. The surfaces are very, very different everywhere you go. So really challenging. Really enjoyable. So Rob should know. He's been here. He's sat in with Pat Richard. So he knows what the stages are like and some of the scenery and trees.
Well, to be fair, he visited some scenery with me because Rob sat with me as well in 2004. So we did have a slight off. Sorry, Rob. There you go. No.
There was one particularly tricky stage in Canada at one point, I remember, when... Yeah, there's a bit of damage done. I remember that. Okay.
No.
Right, well, not embarrass you anymore. Let's move on. By the way,
it wasn't my fault, obviously.
If you look in the comments, Tony Simpson, Gary Boyd's already tweeting that the F2 Absolute Rally podcast will start in 2020. Told you.
Oh God.
Got commitment.
Do you know what? Me and my big mouth.
Cheers.
See, well done, Tony. Right, all right, Teagle. That's my nephew. Teagle was my nickname for certain elements of my rallying growing up. It comes from school, I think. Morris Gas, remember Morris Gas? I used to compete, Darren Gass's dad. We went to the same school together, and a Teagle trailer was a silage trailer. So I don't know where it came from, but that's why. If you speak to Kenny McKinstry and his family, they only call me Teagle. They don't really know my other name, I don't think. So there we go. Thought I'd throw that one in.
I didn't know. But to be fair, Trev, I didn't know your name. I've been saying your surname wrong all the years I've known you. Until you started doing this podcast, I didn't realise it was Agnew.
It's just the way I pronounce it. Paul Evans said the same. Taff said exactly the same thing. I forget about my surname. I just focus on the first name. Right. Okay. Any more questions? Supplementary. What's this? Supplementary question to Tony Simpson. What year of production be complete for Absolute?
2020.
2020.
It will be. It will go out early 2021. There you go.
Cool. There we go. Committed. Right. You get that tweeted, Gary. That'll be brilliant. All right.
God, do you know what? You've got two world champions here, a former one-make king, and you've got me who makes a little podcast every now and again, and I'm getting all the questions. Leave me alone.
Well, you're one of the lead drivers in the BTRTA and a Fiesta R2 with a tricky gearbox in it.
I've got a clicky box, and to be fair, without the help of Gethin and you, Trev, I'd be nowhere. Well, I am nowhere. I just wouldn't be quite as bad as what I am now.
How does that work? What have I done?
Well, you talk to me every now and again.
Oh, yeah. I listen. Yeah. It's good.
Go fast. You just send me a text message on the morning. Go fast. Go fast. Which is just genius.
It's usually go fast, take chances is a normal motto, isn't it, Geth?
Yeah, it's the normal motto.
Okay. No more questions there. I'm going to just jump to a couple of photographs in, Mark. So I want to talk about this man a little bit. They're stretched. Stig, competing with Stig Blomqvist then.
Yeah, I mean, well, household name really for rallying. Stig was an amazing guy, and I remember we were in Spain at one of Anna's companies was a vineyard in Spain and in Pamplona, and we all went for a team dinner and a meeting. I can't remember the meeting actually. I remember the dinner, and it was held in the vineyard. And I was lucky enough to sit next to Stig. And the more wine we gave him, the more stories that he came out with, and it was incredible just sitting there. And you know, for me, just looking up to this guy who's amazing in any car, and we're going to be teammates with him. So it was a great year. Had some awesome opportunities. One of them, we did Autosport, and David Sutton Cars has a museum. So my job there was one of the highlights of anything I've done connected to motorsport. I was driving a Mark 1 Escort historic car. Then I'd jump in my Group N N10 Subaru, and then jump into Stig's X RS200, and 3 completely different cars, and so different. And you know, I said to Stig, "Can you show me about this RS200? Can you show me, you know, what to do with it? Because I've never even sat in one of these things, and they're really scary monster cars to drive." So Stig hops in, and I looked in the mirror, and it still had the interior mirror in it. And I'm like, "Well, what the heck? What's the point of that?" All you can see is, you know, well, you can just see the engine. He was just looked up, and he was like, "Yeah, that's to see if you're on fire." And he was deadly serious.
Yeah.
So this thing was amazing. They did have a problem with going on fire, apparently, because the dampers were on 45 degrees either side of the engine. And when the seals went on the damper, the oil went out and went onto the turbo, and up they go in smoke. But yeah, just some of the stuff that Stig had taught me, from the bar to the car. Very interesting. So lucky lad.
Yeah, for me, it was any opportunity I could get to get him to the bar and get him a couple of beers and just talk about Group B for hours on end. You know, I'll go up and write the notes later. This is far more important. And yeah, there was one time I remember in Sweden as well. Mark, you might be able to remember this. There was a couple of guys stuck, and
yeah.
Stig arrived in the scene. Do you remember the story?
Oh, yeah, it was on the recce, and
Yeah.
I can't remember who was stuck, but
it was an Italian and some sort of thing.
Yeah, it was a 4-wheel drive car, but they'd gone off the road and slid into a ditch. And we were there, I don't know how long after it happened, but there's probably 12, 14 people, different crews there trying to pull this car out. And Stig just sat there and he was like looking to see who's doing what. And then eventually he came over and just went, "No, take the rope off, do it the other way." And everyone's like, "Well, you know." Yeah, and if it wasn't Stig, they'd have just carried on doing what they were doing. But he was like, "Yeah, just do it this way." And they put the rope on the different side of the car and towed it in the opposite direction. It just came out in 2 seconds. He gets back in his car, overtook everyone, and carried on wrecking.
I remember he had to wear a headset all the time because the tinnitus from the Group B straight cut gearboxes. He tinnitus all the time, so he wore a headset everywhere he went, didn't he?
Yeah.
Okay. Stig, what a legend. Amazing. Right, okay, let's go back to the questions quickly. I'm just conscious we're an hour and 3/4 in. Wow, okay. Quick one here. Who's the best F2 driver you raced against or wished you came up against? Neil Weirden, clearly.
Best F2 drivers. Oh, that's tricky. I mean, BRC days, there was so many, and even back in the day, there was Rovanpera, Gardemeister, you know, Gwyndaff, Mark Higgins, Robbie. Everyone was there. So I wouldn't like to say who was the best. They were all just competition, and as long as I beat them, that was fine.
Come on, get off the fence and tell. Come on. What about you?
Martin Rowe. Martin Rowe. There you go. I'll say it.
Yeah.
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 What about Tapio Lagonen?
Yeah, Tapio was really quick, and you know, he's typical Finn. He'd sort of pick a stage and he'd be fastest in there, or he wouldn't be coming out of the stage. That was it. It was literally trophies or trees. So Tapio was, you know, he was a special character. So still very fast to the day. So
brilliant. Okay, Thanks, Gavin, for the question. Andrew, this is quite a long one, but it's basically the Fogo stage in the dark in the 1998 Jim Clark Rally. That's when you made a big impact. Can you remember?
No. Jim Clark.
Do you remember the Fogo stage? It's quite a short one. Near Swinton Fogo together. You know the jump, the one over the crossroads, that direction.
Oh, yes.
Shorter one.
I remember that. Yeah, I had a flat jump in there, and then you had to come up and go over a junction, and which was pretty much flat as well.
That was Swinton, yeah.
Yeah, that's yeah. I don't remember the bits like that.
Clearly made a big impression.
I'm really bad at remembering stages, to be honest. There's some drivers, I mean, they interview Latvala nowadays, and it's like he's got a photographic memory, and he says, "Okay, tell us about the stage," and he'll exact pace notes of where he's going for 20k, whereas I'm just making notes and I'm hoping that, you know, you write them down and you give them back to me when I need them. I don't really remember things like that. I might remember a junction or things, and even to the point at the end of the recce, at the last pass of the stage, we'll try and write some details, and you'll have done 20 or 30k, and you'll go, okay, we'll make some notes to remind us about what was in there. And I'm like, I don't remember it. It's bad, but yeah.
Okay. Somebody was commenting on your eyewear here. You know this guy, Colin McMaster? So he recovered from a cataract surgery, or just in for a big night out? Or just still effing cool?
Talking a big night out, my daughter's just walked in. Here's her room, by the way.
Hi, Toby.
I haven't drank.
Hey, Toby.
Oh, she's gone now. I haven't drank any beer since January. Yeah, I haven't been drinking at all, so I don't do big nights out anymore. Too old. So I guess I'm just
that's
cool.
that's why you age so well then. All those mad days are over.
Yes.
As we said earlier, we can't talk about nights out in Oxford with Colin McMaster, Richard Burns, Jason Plato, oh, here's a good one.
Did Robbie Head buzz the engine? If there wasn't evidence on film, I wouldn't get involved, but there is a film that shows something to suggest that.
All right. Slip on, we'll move on because Robbie might have a peep at this. Right. You talked about the candle, which seemed to get a bit of interest in it. Let me just take that away in case Robbie turns on that one. Right. The candle seemed to... I got a lot of positive feedback from that and people interested in it a little bit more. So it's worth people having a look at you just before you look at the candle. This is probably something at the start of a stage, isn't it?
I think it could be. Could be. You look fairly relaxed. Normally you don't look that relaxed, so it can't be the end of the stage. You'd have been still in that panic mode.
What are you talking about? Super cool.
Or I'm nodding off. Yeah, I mean, the candle thing, you know, there's all sorts of different ways people can prepare themselves, but it worked for me. And, you know, I said to Claire when she was going to do a rally about it once, and she still takes the piss out of me about doing it. But, you know, I can even now, I'll just close my eyes, focus on a candle. And for me, it sort of resets everything and I can get my head in tune, ready to start the stage.
Okay. We talked about that jump, but here's another jump.
Yeah, that's Germany in Trier. So know that well. I think that was, did we have a gear lever at that point? Because on that rally, the gear lever snapped off and there was just this little short, like 1.5 inch stub up through the tunnel. And I'm just trying to change gear with this like 2 inch stub. It wasn't even sticking up all the way through the tunnel.
That was in the vineyards. That was the day before, I think, wasn't it?
Okay.
and you did bollock me as well in the vineyards for trying to tell you to slow down or something. Just read the notes. So what else have we got that particular year then? See what else we've got here. That one is quite a good one. Just to have Mr. McMaster here, he sent me this picture. So
nice. Yeah.
Remember that?
That was just huge relief and yeah, difficult 3 days to get through. But yeah, that was the highlight.
Actually, that was at the finish as opposed to the end of the stage. So that was the ceremonial finish in Ajaccio.
I remember there's something weird went on there. There was like we were waiting for the priority guys to go through, or waiting for something to happen, and we were there for ages, maybe an hour or two, and we just wanted to go and have a beer and celebrate. And it was like, you got to wait, and then all of a sudden, whatever we were waiting for hadn't happened, and they just went, "Okay, you go through," and it was like, "Come on, get them out of the way." I'm like, hang on a minute.
Yeah, exactly. And we didn't spend much time at the stage stop. Cole was probably there, and he'd attest to that. And then we ended up getting to Monte Carlo. Do you remember that?
Oh yes, yeah. A highlight there.
So one trophy means that there was no such a thing as a co-driver title. So everybody says that I'm a world champion. I'm not officially a world champion because there's no championship for the co-driver. And that was the same with the junior world championship as well. And something that vexed not just me, but also Daniel Elena a couple of years earlier when they won the junior championship. So over a couple of beers, Mr. Elena, Phil Mills, who with Petter won the championship that year, we started to have a growl at Nino Rossi, and sure enough, not the next year because it was too late, but the following year there was championships for driver and co-driver. But right to this day, I don't think there's a trophy for the winning co-driver. So Julian Ingratius, for example, there was no trophy for him, just a perpetual or a replica every year since. So, but I always say, go on.
That trophy, actually, I remember we came home from that, put it in the overhead bin in the plane, and when it got back to wherever we were flying to, the glass bit had snapped off the base. It was just glued on with some super glue or something. It was only the FIA. I guess they didn't have the budget. But I had to get some Gorilla Glue and stick it back on.
It was quite a mad night, that, wasn't it? And you think about it. So we ended up staying in Coulthard's Hotel, the Columbus.
That's right.
Petter and Lappy and Nick Fry and all that lot were there, so we booked in there.
Well, it was the Autosport Awards, and they were doing a big team photo at the end of that, and I was happened to be stood next to Coulthard for the photo, and I realized, I remember he had a hotel in Monte Carlo, so Monaco. So there's a picture of us, and I'm there trying to get a deal on a room, and everyone's looking forward at the camera, and I'm looking at David. He's looking back at me, trying to get a deal for the do. So it worked.
Do you remember what happened the day before? So if we look back at this photo again, it's not really clear, but if we look at the top of your head,
yeah,
you look a bit like Gorbachev, really, don't you?
That's when. Yeah, we embarrassed Damon Hill, didn't we?
No, but tell everybody what happened there.
I don't know what I've done. I took a chunk out of my head that doing something stupid, I guess. And
you were running the day before, or at least that's what you told me anyway. And you didn't dock far enough.
I caught it on a tree or something. I can't remember, but we were at the do all fancied up, and then Damon Hill came over, and he'd mistaken me.
Before you start this, actually, we'd been to the Columbus. We had a couple of beers. So the time we got to the Grimaldi Forum, we were both synchronized bladders, had to go. So I said to Jax, my wife has no interest in motorsport. Don't talk to anybody. Just don't talk to anybody. So we go to the toilet, come back, and she's talking to this bloke. And we go over, and I thought, oh, God, what's she saying? So it turns out
it's Damon
Hill. Jack had no idea who he was. It was Damon Hill. As I said, what were you talking about? He said, well, it just told me lovely hair. But yeah, so he got a bit confused between you and Richard because Richard was ill at that point. So yeah, we'll not go there. But we did a rally then after all. Oh, by the way, we didn't go to the nightclub downstairs with Bernie and that. The one regret I have with that photograph is, as we had that photograph, just behind us was Michael Schumacher. And it would have been kind of cool to have a photograph of Schumacher, the four of us or three of us. That would have been quite nice, and we didn't do that. But we didn't go to the disco down in whatever it was, so we ended up going to Stars and Bars. You remember that?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's a good night out.
Didn't go back to the Columbus Hotel, nothing. Just me, you, your girlfriend, Jax, Stars and Bars, and we had a mighty time in our black ties. Right, we did one other rally, so this is why I can call myself a World Rally Champion co-driver, because I have co-driven you since you won the World Championship, and that was... That was in a Mark I Escort.
Nice.
This is 10 years after we won the title, so 2013.
What am I doing there?
Synchronized bladder, mate. Synchronized bladder. We talked about it in the pod. So that was that's your father-in-law's Mark 1, and we did a rally in it. So Graham did it in his Mark 2 Escort. Claire, your wife, did it in a Clio, which he somehow got to Canada. I don't know how it got there, who shipped it, or whatever it was. Any idea of that?
Yes.
Yeah. So somebody might have shipped that over.
Well? Is that the Escort as well?
That is the Escort, yeah.
I thought
So
so.
thanks to Tony, they are now sat in our garage just downstairs.
There you go. So that didn't work out quite well. It was quite interesting. We were on the pace quite quickly in this rally, weren't we, though?
You had never driven it. Well, yeah, actually, then you came down to Wales. We had a quick go with the car. It was more Graham, my father-in-law, was driving, and Claire as well. And Claire hadn't been in a car for a while, so we went down to Sweetland for the day, and Gethin came along. And Claire drove the Clio around, sat in with Claire in the rally car as well, which was awesome. And luckily, Gethin and I didn't do another lap, because
very lucky.
Maybe we'd have had a huge accident, and it would have all been very different. But yeah, we went down to the Tempest rally, and we were pretty much on the pace first couple of stages, and I think it was stage 3. It was just a spectator stage, luckily, and I was changing down to 3rd gear, and it's only got a 4-speed box anyway. But literally, the stub axle broke off, and the right front wheel came off with the caliper. Well, there you go. Everything. So I had no brakes, no steering, and luckily we just went off into some small shrubs and bushes. And it's one of those things where if you've had anything break on a rally car and you have a huge accident and you go and say, "Oh yeah, what happened?" Well, something broke. Everyone's like, "Yeah, you know." But this, we had photographic evidence, and I've got a picture on the wall downstairs of the wheel actually coming off. So that was it.
What I remember about that, on the first stage, I think we were 3rd quickest 2-wheel drive car. I think we were on it, and it was still the 2nd stage. It bogged down a little bit on hairpin, so it went off the cam. But there's one part on that 2nd stage that was over crest, like 100-mile-an-hour stuff. Imagine we'd have landed and that wheel had to come off. It was our fault. Like everybody would have said, it's our fault. We crashed it. But yeah, and I was a bit nervous before getting into that rally anyway. So that was it. That's so all I could do at the end of it, once the wheel come off, is do my best impression of Daniel Elena. Look at that. It's quite stretched. You'll be glad to know that I have lost 1.5 stone now as of this 1st of January. So I'm only 11.5 stone now. So lost it all again. Do you notice the difference in the driver and co-driver? That's the way it should be, co-drivers. That's, co-driver always clean, driver always showing the mud. Okay. Good memories, yeah. Let's have a quick look at the comments and see if there's anybody else. Okay, let's go with this one. If you choose any F2 car you could own, what would it be? Good question, this.
Yeah, it'd have to be the McGann. Just awesome, fond memories in that car. And yeah, it's up for sale. So if anyone can lend me 150,000 euros, that would be great. And
our World Championship winning cars for sale as well. You told me, is that for sale? Or?
Yeah, Martin Spurrell. I was in touch with him recently, and he said that car's for sale. So I'd be great if if we had some money to spend on some toys. They would be the 2 cars that I'd love to own.
It's only 2 days ago you were talking about having 2 £1 million mortgages or $1 million mortgages. Surely you can find a few quid to buy a couple of rally cars. What's wrong with you? Gethin, F2 car.
I probably have to go for 306 maxi kit car, because I'd really like to wear my overalls up around my arms like this as well and sit about this far away from the steering wheel. Imagine I'm Gilles Panizzi, because I think that was a super cool car at that point.
Only because of the wooden gear lever, wooden gear knob, even. Tony, F2 car.
Is anybody ever found out why they had a wooden gear knob? I know I've said this before, but I'd love to know what the logic was behind it. But anyway,
just speak to Mick Linford. I'm sure we can get that answer.
Okay, right. All rounder, I'd say the McGann. Just tarmac only the 306 Maxi. So I'm going to have 2. Sorry.
See, nobody picks the Zara.
Yeah, but the Zara wasn't, and we know how good the Zara was, but it wasn't as sexy I'm sorry, it just wasn't. It just didn't have the look of the 306. It didn't have the look of the McGann. I still think the Citroen had a lot of stigma attached to it back at that point.
Okay, fine, right. We'll get rid of that one. We'll come back to that one in a second. Should there be more Shell sponsored scholarships? Other sponsors are available. Just when you're on, Tony.
Yes, without a shadow of a doubt. We've talked about this so many times, Trev, as you know. The industry is changed dramatically, but I kind of forgot so much listening back to what you and Martin were speaking about on the podcast. And, of course, what Gethin went through with, winning prize drives and stuff like that. We didn't realise just how lucky, and there was so much taken for granted back then. I think the car manufacturers were so taken for granted for what they were putting in at the time, and it's just not sexy anymore, is it? Rallying, sadly, is just not the marketing tool that it once was, and I never see it being like that unless we go full electric, which, and I know you think is probably the right way to go, Trev. But I can't see any other reason why a car manufacturer now come in and fund anything like that.
Geth, we work together quite a bit with car manufacturers, and we always keep an eye on motorsport. Formula E, clearly, is a lot of manufacturers involved. What's your thoughts?
I think electric definitely is the way forward, that's for sure. As we both know, charge times are becoming much, much faster. We were both involved in the Porsche Taycan launch. And just for Martin to know as well, I did a launch control of the Taycan, and I've never seen an Irishman dance with his little feet in the air ever again. Like, it was hilarious to watch. It's the fastest car you've ever driven off the line. And Trevor was having good fun, should we say. But no, I think electric cars are amazing. I've started to do a little bit of help with a little single-seater car, which has got an electric motor set up in the back as well. 2 electric motors, one for each rear wheel, to do torque vectoring. Because as a hill climb car, it makes really good sense because you don't have to worry about charging. If you look at some of the electric rallycross cars, the way they're being developed, yes, you do some of the sound, and we all know how fantastic an F2 car sounded, but the potential's there with it. And as electrification gets better and better, I think it is the only way forwards. F1 might be the only thing that gets away with that electrification if it goes back to pure snorty kind of petrol engines. But other than that, I don't think there's anything else we can do.
I think we should have a Prius one-make championship.
Oh.
Like, there's 20-year-old Priuses about there. Surely you can put a cage in them and off we go.
Only if it's banger racing, Trev. Only if it's banger racing.
Mark, Shell sponsorship, you were the benefactor of that for a few years.
Yeah, I mean, I was lucky in that day, and like Alistair McRae, Burnsy, Johnny Milner, Robbie Head, Mark, they were all sort of involved in the Shell scholarship. There's nothing been anything like that since the Shell days, so sort of put me on the spot and gave lots of different drivers the opportunity, and even just the smaller per rally bonuses Shell offered. They were a big support to motorsport in general. It's a shame there isn't anything like that now.
Okay. I think after 2 hours, guys, that's probably it for a wrap, unless you've got anything else that you need to get off your chest, Martin.
No, it's been good. Thank you very much for sort of digging in the depth of my memories to bring back some happy times and good times. It's been good to chat to everyone. So thank you.
I just remembered there was one story that you wanted to tell about Cyprus and your dodgy ear. Remember that?
I do remember, yeah.
That is a good story to tell, actually. Go on.
We Cyprus Rally, and we left service. I remember we left service, and there was this annoying noise from the back of the Subaru. And
that was me.
Yes, that was it. There was like something going on, and it was like a wheel scraper, and on the inside of the rim, you had a wheel scraper that would take all the mud off the rim, so it didn't get covered in mud and damage the brake components and what have you. And I thought there was this weird noise, so I jumped out the side of the road and went underneath the back of the car, and literally I heard like bacon frying, and a split second later I was like, "Whoa!" and it burned. I don't know if you can see it. It burned this massive chunk out of my ear on the exhaust pipe, and we're on the way to a stage. It's like 30 odd degrees, and I had to put like that. Literally burnt. See it? Burnt this big chunk out here. So I had to put a balaclava on, and then a stilo helmet with the tight things on, and rub that in for the next few hours, then go back to service, and then the Subaru doctor had a look at it and stuff, and I was pretty uncomfortable, and just randomly it got interviewed at the end of the day, and whoever was asking the questions for the film thing was like, oh yeah, it's really difficult conditions, you must be exhausted, and I was like, well, my ear is, and it was funny at the time, but yeah, that wasn't great.
Cool. Gethin, anything you want to add before we wrap?
Just really linking back to what you talked about in the podcast, really. Martin mentioned about his Zen steering, which I know everyone laughs about, but is really sensible, and minimizing movement and efficiency. And I think it's what you notice with anybody who's good at any sport is they seem to create time for themselves. And I wonder if that's a thing that Martin has ever thought about as well. There's a quote from Gene Kelly, the dancer, who always said, "If you look like you're trying hard, you're not trying hard enough." And I think that's really interesting to kind of consider as how we can make things look much easier if you put all the effort in.
Excellent. Tony, any last thoughts?
No, I think just kudos to Martin, really, and I appreciate what he said. But he said, well, it doesn't really matter now because I'm not doing it. He mentioned that in the podcast, but I think his open and honesty of what he went through to become a British champion and then become a world champion as well, and the methods that he used, they're not as outlandish, I suppose, to some degree, what people are doing today. But back then, he probably would have been seen as like some kind of witch doctor or something like that. But today, going to talk to somebody about your sport and trying to offload, weight and not bringing any carry-on baggage into the car, as it were, to make the car lighter psychologically, all these things which I've spoke to several people about. You and I, Trevor, have spoke at length before now about these types of things. I just think any young driver who's not listening to this and not tapping into this type of information is missing a massive trick right now.
Okay, yeah, I agree with that. Martin, sorry, last words then before we wrap.
Right.
No,
go.
that's it.
Last words.
You've already told me, so that's fine. I just want to thank you for the time that you put into this, the podcast in particular, the chats that we had before, just to make sure we're on track. Tonight, over 2 hours again when you're absolutely flat out of family time. Thanks for being so honest. I knew you would be. Thanks for telling the best stories and the wicked sense of humour. And thanks for being my mate over the last 20 years. It's just a joy to be part of this journey and all the stuff that we've done. The memories, we could talk for another 2 days, 3 days on it. And it's just great to share it with other people. And again, like Tony just pointed out, your honesty around the performance side of things and doing things a little bit different is really what it's all about. That's it, folks. With nothing more tonight. Thanks, everyone. I'm just going to play out with a little credit now because we've got fancy gadgets. It almost looks as if I'm professional. So 2 weeks' time, we'll be back again. So the Friday podcast, same as we did this time with Mr. Neil Weirden, and a Sunday Q&A with him. So thanks, everybody, for your attention. Thanks for all the views from the first show. Hopefully you'll enjoy this one as much, and we'll catch you later.